Hello, everyone. I'm Emil Dobrovolschi. I'm a pilot for the last 30 years. I've been flying as a professional pilot. I'm an instructor and I'm an examiner.
And I'm Ovtavian Pantis. I'm an entrepreneur, a trainer, and an author. Catch us on this week's episode of the Jesse T Show.
Octavian and Emil, welcome to the Jesse T Show.
Thanks for the invitation. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you for having us.
My pleasure. I hear that Emil just had the dream bike ride through Austria. How was your journey?
Oh, excellent. Great place, great roads, nice people, good food. Everything was perfect.
Beautiful, beautiful. And how is it? Is it rustic and farmland? Is it city? Is it a little bit of both?
Yeah, I went over I avoided the crowded or the motorways. I went through the mountains on the side roads. It was perfect to see the lakes, to see the surroundings. Beautiful country. I recommend to go there. Beautiful.
Sounds like a dream trip. And for you, Octavian, we connected a while back and you were telling me about who you are and what you do. Just kind of give us a high level overview of that journey, kind of who you are.
Sure. I've been an entrepreneur in the training industry. We have an international training and consulting business operating since 1999, and we work with international organizations, helping them on what we call the human side of business performance. So if you want to optimize stocks or launch into a new market, it's not us, but if there's anything that's people related, how do we improve retention? How do we grow leaders? That's what we've been doing. We've learned a lot. These last 2 years have been a super experience for us as well as for customers. It's really the time of change, probably the biggest change that our generation will see. Yeah. And it's a time of choice now, because things are not entirely shaped into a new form. Everybody, if they want to live life in a certain way, move to another part of the country or the world, or do something else, now is the best time to do that.
Yeah, there's a lot of change going on in the world, and there's a lot of, I believe there's a lot of hope behind all the things that are going on. So I think that you're correct in saying this could be a great time to manifest what it is that we're looking to create. And so for Emil, tell us a little bit about your journey and your background.
I have been flying as a professional pilot for the last 30 years or so, and for the last 18 years, I'm a holder and the privilege of a European Aviation Safety Agency examiner. And for the last 4 years or so, I'm a senior examiner with the Romanian Civil Aviation Authority. So I have been training pilots in my national carrier for the last, I don't know, maybe 25 years. So I saw passing through in front of me most, if not all, the pilots in my Romanian national carrier. And I have been telling stories to them, because every time I try to make somebody to obey the rules, to follow the rules, to follow the SOP, I try a most human approach, because if you make someone to understand the rule, it will be easier for them to obey or to follow the rule. And every time I looked for this side story to explain how the rule was created. And as Octavian said, in aviation, there's a treasure of know-how to keep in the air. I don't know, in 2019, there was a record of 250,000 flights, only commercial flights, that day in June. So imagine the quality of the people involved, the training of the people involved, starting with the pilots, cabin crew, air traffic controllers. So every time I try to make people understand in my job first, I will always start with a story. I will always start with the human touch of a normal or of a rule. It's easier to make people understand that way. And when I speak in front of the different audience, when I speak to doctors or I speak to architects or to people from administration, every time I'm speaking only about my job. And it's amazing to see people from the completely different sector of business that follow me after the speech. And, wow, it's exactly as in my business. Doesn't matter if they're working in a hospital or in a public building or a personal business. So the professionals everywhere, they have to follow the same rules. They have the same challenges. They have to communicate well and honestly. They have to lead and to know this, to solve the different situations they can come, you know. So this is exactly my job. What I do better is to communicate well. I lead and I solve the crisis situations. This is my job.
I love it. We're going to get into that conversation pretty heavily here. I want to know really quickly from you, Emil. Tell me about how you actually got into aviation, into flying. Was this a lifelong pursuit, or was it a career change? And how did you come upon this journey?
I started very early because I'm passionate of flying since I was a little child. Even now, if I'm sitting at the terrace, I see I hear a noise. I'm looking for the aircraft to see what type, what engines they have. So I'm passionate about my job. So I started early. I joined the military academy, and I finished after 4 years. And then I flew for the Romanian acrobatic team. And then I joined the national carrier as a co-pilot, and I started step by step for the last 30 years, as I told you. And now I'm an examiner with them, and I'm flying mostly Airbus. I was a test pilot. I was for 15 years, I was the official pilot, the official flight pilot. I flew with all the presidents of Romania, with the governments, with the prime ministers in Romania, and not just for Romanian administrative leaders.
And as far as I'm curious about the I think you call it the Romanian team, or the Romanian almost like stunt team came to mind. Is this similar like the Blue Angels, or like these different?
Yeah, something like this. Yeah.
Okay, very cool. And Octavian, tell me a little bit more about your journey and a little bit how you actually got connected with Emil.
Yeah. I heard about Emil on a flight in 2008. We were going on a vacation with my family. And what was special about that flight was that the captain addressed the passengers, and we were able to hear everything he said. Now, I'm sure that you and many of the people who listen to us have been on numerous flights where the captain speaks, but you don't understand what he or she is saying. Like sometimes I say that they speak holding their nose, like they go, "Hello, this is your pilot speaking," and then you don't understand a clue. But on that particular flight, we could understand the temperature outside, what the weather conditions would be, what we can see on the right hand, what we can see on the left hand. And at the end of the flight, I asked to meet the captain, and that's how I met Emil. And then we became friends, and we invited him a couple of times to speak to our team at Qualians. And every time he was with us, we found the stories interesting, fascinating, but not only that, also useful. We could learn about how aviation deals with communication, with promoting people, with feedback and all these things. And then we invited Emil to speak to some of the companies that we work for. And again, every time that happened, the messages were there. So I at one point, about 3 years ago, I said, Emil, you should write a book, because there's a treasure of know-how, and you're able to translate that know-how very well into, we did not want to write the book. My suggestion was not write a book for pilots, but write a book for people of all ways of life who want to be even better. And then he said, why don't we write it together? I had a bestseller under my belt and wrote some audiobooks as well. So that's what we did. So this is the book, by the way. Anybody, if you want, you can put in the show notes the website of the book, because anybody can go there and download a chapter and read for free. It's darkcockpitbook.com. And then, of course, if you want to buy the book, you find it everywhere: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple, and so on. What is the book about? It's not a storybook. It's not a biography. It's not my life in aviation of Emil. It's not, on the other hand, there are another series of books about aviation accidents and what you can learn from them. And they scare you. No, it has principles and learning, stories and learning, rules and learnings. And it's what we've known from what we've heard from people buying the book was that read, and that it also helped them very much. And we've had people buy it for their teenage kids. We had people buy it for their parents. We had customers, we had buying for their own customers, and so on. So that's how we met. And today we spend quite some time in front of audiences, face-to-face or online, translating these messages, because there is a need. How do we handle change? There's a lot of stress today with COVID and with the pandemic and with everything else. And people are eager to find out things that work. And in aviation, many things work. They have to, otherwise there wouldn't be planes. So that's more or less the journey so far.
And for those of you listening, Octavian held up a copy of the book called Dark Cockpit. Can you talk a little bit about the narrative, in terms of like, you go back and forth from stories and principles and rules and ideas and things that sounds very practical, that you can take a learning lesson, but then you can implement a tool or an idea into your leadership. And I love how you wrote it, because and I'm sure you did this very intentionally, but if you wrote it for just pilots, it's a very niche, small market. There's not a lot of people to touch there as there would be everyone else in leadership. And so talk about, you know, who the book's designed for in different, you know, categories of leadership. And then also talk about what they'll find within the book that they can apply to their game day to day.
Yeah, the book has three big sections, three big parts. The first one is about communication. Pilots are expert communicators. They have to just imagine if you tell the waiter, I want a salad, but please no onion in it, and they bring it to you with onion, you waste 10 minutes and you get another salad, and that's fine. But in aviation, if there's a miscommunication, that can lead to terrible things. So that's the first section. How can you communicate better? The second section is called Lead Responsibly. The captain is a leader, and one of the chapter title is A New Crew Every Day, because what happens in aviation, in commercial aviation, is that you fly with different people. Now, in a normal size airline, you might fly every 2 months with the same co-pilot, but in one of the large airlines of the world, like the big American ones or big European ones, it might be another year or so until you fly again with the same co-pilot. What does it mean? It means that, yeah, you have the 4 stripes and everybody knows that you're captain, but you have to build that leadership and build it into their eyes every single time. And you don't do it by being autocratic, but you do it by building trust and communicating properly and all that. And the third part is about how can you be more in control? Now, of course, God is in control, or whoever people believe is the greater being out there. But still, there are many, many things that we can do. And in many cases, we just don't. We just leave too much to chance. And we talk about what are the things that you can do to be more in control of your job, of your life, of your projects, of it. So that's it. And in terms of title, we had 2 titles on the short list. One was This is Your Captain Speaking, because it positions it nicely. This is know-how from aviation. We dropped that because we did not want to sound arrogant, like you shut up now, because that's not the approach. The approach is very friendly. Here's a story, here's what learning, and here's what you can do. We don't insist that people do these things, but we build them with examples and with principles and with facts. And we dropped the first title because we like the one, also because we like the other one better, Dark Cockpit. Maybe I give the word to Emil to describe what it means, but it sounds a little bit like the Lord of the Rings, like the Dark Tower of Sauron, something. But actually, it's a good expression. When you fly in what you call a dark cockpit, it's a good thing. And maybe Emil can describe the title a little bit.
Yeah, Dark Cockpit. Thank you, Octavian. Octavian has a good eye on looking on things. You know, he discovered new meanings, and for me, it was a great honor to work with him on the book, because he's such a good listener, and he has a good eye on discovering things. And all my experiences, I'm a storyteller. I can tell people about them. But when you have somebody to point it the direction, to say, look, this is very nice to do this, it improved me myself. You know, my stories are getting better, even though the happening passed. You know, but my story are becoming better. To come back to the dark cockpit term, it's an aviation term, meaning that everything is okay. Meaning that on your overhead panel, on your cockpit, everything, it's not is not an alarm, is no a chime or a continuous repetitive chime, like a bing, 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 bing with the red light on it. There are no blue lights with on, meaning an extra consumption, or there are no white lights, meaning there are some systems are off when you put deliberately on off. Now, to translate this to other people, not pilots or professional acting in aviation, meaning that your personal overhead panel or your personal cockpit, it's in a dark cockpit status, meaning that you're doing something well. Everything goes smoothly. Every time you look at your cockpit, virtual cockpit, you discover it is in dark cockpit, meaning that you're okay. But if you have a white light, you know that it's off because you put it on off. Maybe you have a partner who's in off. Sometimes you have a caution light. You see it immediately because everything else is not lit. You see this light and you realize immediately it's a caution. It's like a toothache or something. You can postpone it. But if there are many other lights there, it's not dark cockpit anymore. We call it the Christmas cockpit. So it's hard to manage your life as a professional, even in your personal life. It's hard to manage it if you have lights all over the place, sirens and warnings. It's hard to be better, or to go further, to finish your projects, things like this. So the dark cockpit has, in my opinion, in our opinion, it's a strong word with the power of Octavian. We laugh now, but with the power of the black swan of Nicholas Taleb. Everybody knows now the term is like a meme, black swan, with something unexpectedly happened like this and changes everything around us. So the dark cockpit, I think, will become a meme, a strong one in aviation, not just in aviation, but is in other businesses.
I love it. Yeah, and you think about kind of just, you know, if you drive in a car through the years and you have all these like warning lights on, like check engine and all these different things. I mean, and you've actually, I've heard the term, it's lit up like a Christmas tree. Like if you have like a dashboard that has all these lights. So immediately I was thinking the darker, the better, the quieter, the better, just a beautiful stasis to be able to travel. And so this book really transcends into leadership. And I think one of the biggest, most effective tools in leadership is communication. And it sounded like that might be somewhere near the beginning or one of the main points. But for either one of you, just in your entrepreneurial journey and your professional careers, talk about some of the staples, some of the principles in the book where you really saw these, whether it's communication or some of these other ideas in the book, where they really, you know, had this great impact in a moment for you, where there was like a light bulb that went off and said, you know what, this is going to be something that's going to be part of my ethos, something that I'm going to carry through my professional and entrepreneurial career, and deploy it, and deploy things like empathy, or effective leadership, and all these different things, crisis management, which we'll talk about some of these things and how they came to, and how they got in the book.
Let me give an example, something that's obvious or simple, but still in many cases doesn't have feedback. And for me, researching for the book and talking with Emil and studying everything, it was fascinating to discover, for instance, that in communication, there's always feedback. Just imagine the following conversation between a tower and a plane, right? Maybe the tower might say, Tarom flight 123, maintain heading 270. Now, if you watch a movie and you hear that, you know that as soon as that message is done, someone in the cockpit will repeat that and say something like, this is Tarom flight 123, maintaining heading 270. It would be unthinkable if feedback did not exist there, right? Mm-hmm. If just imagine flight 123, maintain heading 270, and then
silence.
Silent. That would be bad. Like that would be a horror movie. What's going on? They lost control. Everybody's there. What's going on? It's unthinkable. So you always hear the feedback. What is the feedback? The feedback is never okay. Tower says, because what does okay mean? Okay might mean I understood you, but I disagree with heading 270. Or I understood you, I agree, we'll take 270, but not now. No, the feedback exists. And in many cases, it's the repeat of the message. Now, by contrast, in companies, there's a meeting, the boss presents something, and the feedback is very limited. Any questions? No. Did you understand? Yes. Okay, have a great day. But we don't know what they understood. I mean, somebody may have presented for 20 minutes showing 15 slides about what the priorities are for the next quarter, or how we're going to approach the market, or whatever. But if we spend 20 minutes on that, why don't we spend maybe 5 minutes, if not more than that, just making sure that people know exactly what to do? Because otherwise what happens is that somebody's talking about the plans for the next one, and people leave with different messages.
Yes.
My message, my conclusions could be, oh, it's bad. The previous quarter was bad. Now that's why we have to double up now. I should better be looking for a different job because it's tough, right? Another message could be, okay, finally, this is my project. I don't quite like how it was implemented, but I'll talk to the boss later. Somebody else might leave with a different message. And that's bad for a team, because everybody says, oh, we need to be a team, and we need to be aligned, and we need to be on the same page. But how do we do that? By spending time on feedback, by making sure, what could the manager say, or the one, okay, before we conclude, who'd like to summarize maybe 2 or 3 points? And Michael could say something, and Jenna could say something, and as the one who has been presented, whether or not they were attentive or they were dealing with their emails while you were presenting, number one. Number two, you can see the amount of data they've remembered, which tells a lot about engagement and clarity and so on. And if you don't see all the messages enough, then you'll have to have some one-to-ones with some people, because if you don't do all these things, we might be in the same format 2 or 3 weeks down the line, and with the promotion, the big plan still on paper or in PowerPoint, and that's not good. So feedback, and in many cases, maybe there is a feedback, but we understand different things through the same words. For instance, let's before the 4th wave hits or 5th wave or whatever wave it will hit, let's have a party for customers. Do you want to be, Michael? Yes. Do you want to be in charge of the party? Yes. Make sure we have a great party. Fine. But what do we understand by great party? Because it might mean something for me and something for them. So what is the learning? The learning is that, and this was impressive, captains, we see them on airports and everybody moves to the sides and they have their headsets on them and they look like demigods sometimes. They're not, but they look like that. But they don't think it's beneath them to repeat the message, to clarify the message. If they did not understand what the tower said, they don't say, oh, I don't know, but he must have said something. So no. Say again, please. And again, the tower has absolutely no problem saying again the message, because everybody understands the stakes are very high. So if they don't think it's beneath them to repeat, to give feedback, why would people in other walks of life? Just because we don't carry 200 souls on the plane, yeah, but we might carry something that's still important for us. It's my project, it's my team. So I can never emphasize the importance of giving feedback, on making sure that people understood what you said. And when we're on the receiving end, don't just assume, let's clarify. Do you mean this? Let me summarize. Is this okay? Do I understand correctly? You want me to do ABC? Yes, fine. It will take 30 seconds, but then we're aligned. Then we are truly aligned.
Yeah, I think check.
Look,
Go ahead.
about communication, some things in aviation are inconceivable. The way we communicate is it was shaped up by accidents. The word is that aviation history was written in blood. So of course, the communications is vital. Has a paramount importance for us. And imagine the environment we are working in. We are in a dark cockpits, both looking forward, not seeing each other, to validate with body language, to validate the message. There's no other things other than words and maybe the tone and tonality to pass the message in critical moments. Now imagine that you fly in a very crowded airspace together with other hundreds of aircraft in the same moment, and all of them, they have to avoid towering cumulus, stormy cloud.
Sure.
Yeah. Now imagine that all from the sudden, there's no airways. There are no more rules about the distance between aircraft. Of course, there are some, but imagine the hectic moment when everybody have to communicate very sharp and very precise. Now imagine the communication between traffic controllers and aircraft. Imagine the conversation in the cockpits, because if everything is going well, maybe it's easy. Yeah, just you are passed from one controller to another, flying over countries or different territories, and you just repeat the frequency and you go to the next frequency, and it seems easy. Even though in those moments you have to be on the same page with your co-pilot or with your co-captain. So without the feedback, and feedback is not just to repeat the message, the feedback you get from the other colleague, and the way we are saying that we are growing our co-pilots. And I have a story with one of the youngest co-pilots. She was just starting in aviation, and she almost yelled at me, landing gear down. And guess what? This was a feedback, because she called it twice before, but I was so concentrated on other things. It was a critical moment. And then I didn't hear I realized she said something, but only when she almost yelled, I lowered the gear. And I thank her, because my giving and accepting the feedback, it's a good thing, because this as a leader, they will make you better. Your outcome, your product, my flight is better when I accept feedback from my co-pilots, because this allows me to mentally step back and have a better overview over things. my decision will be better, my flight will be better when I accept a feedback from one of my co-pilots. But I see this in aviation. I see less of this in another business parties. You know, it's amazing for us, for aviators, for pilots, for professional pilots, because for us the communication is so important that we recognize the value of each member of the crew. So there's nobody in plus, as I said, there's no place occupied by a crew member just to be there. Okay, we have an extra place, let's put somebody there. No, everybody is trained, they're professionals, and they are there for a reason. So accept this as a leader, show them the respect and accept the feedback. This will make you better and your outcome and product will be better.
Yeah, communication, you know, we talk about that so much as leaders, but really what it comes down to when you're saying feedback, and I think the biggest piece is checking for understanding. When you ask for that feedback and you validate it, and what it does too, it actually shows that you care about your people. And if you're a leader, you better care about your people because they're the ones that are helping you lead. Like it's 360. So getting that feedback, getting out, you talk about constructive criticism, and you know, we all have a lot of work to do on our ego, and we can get into psychology and talk about Carl Jung and all this different stuff. But, you know, people aren't attacking you. They're trying to make you better. Right. And especially in a corporate setting. Now, you do have one-offs where people are, you know, maybe misaligned or misguided. But for the most part, the company only thrives when the team is doing well. And so really getting that understanding from your team of, hey, I'd love to, you know, hear any feedback. I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts on this. Like, where do you feel like we might be off or where we're on kind of thing? These are the types of things that really make a better culture. And you hear so many people talking about that, you know, culture piece today in companies with guys like Simon Sinek or Brene Brown, like all these thought leaders that are talking more about the soft sciences in business, the, you know, the art of communication, the idea that, you know, we should be more empathetic as leaders. It doesn't mean we can't put our foot down when we need to, but at the end of the day, we're doing business with people. So I love the idea of that. So talk a little bit more about the crisis management, because that just sounds interesting. So talk a little bit about how that works in the book and how it works in these businesses and how you effectively lead people through that.
So let me start. So I'm working in a hostile environment, you know, because it's a science, but also a miracle to make an airplane fly. I consider this as a miracle because if you look at this chunk of metal of, 200 tons flying in the air with 1,000 miles per hour, and everything is hostile outside the aircraft, outside this metallic tube with seats and wings. So to make it fly, it's a lot of science. And we are prepared. We have landmarks and we have a plan for everything. We have a scenario that we follow it in our minds for each landmark or each stage of the flight. But when bad things are happening, they're happening as a crisis. And a crisis is unexpected. It's unexpected, had a bad outcome. So it's every time you can prepare for the bad, but sometimes it's completely unexpected, you know, like this pandemic. Nobody expected to see no flights in the sky. The entire industry stopped. Everybody sitting on an empty sky without aircraft, as I did for a year.
Wow.
So these kind of things, you can train yourself. You can maintain a good level of your knowledge. You can maintain as much as you can a good level of your skill. And you have to be open all the time that everything can change immediately. And you have to, as a resilient person, you know, if somebody asked me 2 years ago if I'm a resilient, I would say, what is that? But now I know I was resilient all my entire career because I was prepared and I kept this, I kept this part of me prepared for everything. You know, sometimes you can see me drinking the coffee, sipping the coffee in a dark cockpit. Yeah. But I know any second where I am at, where I'm, what are the mountains, how high are the mountains next to me. If one engine stops, what I will do. If both engines stops, what I will do. So I have a plan for everything. But seeing me like this, drinking the coffee in a cockpit, looks like I'm very relaxed. In some way, I am relaxed because I'm mastering my flight, my aircraft. But on the same time, it's a continuous scan, it's a continuous listening, it's a continuous work with your colleague to maintain this dark cockpit.
Can you peel back the curtain a little bit and essentially open the cockpit door in terms of talking about what it's actually like to fly a plane in 2021? Because I feel like there's some people that maybe not know what they talk about or how they speak about it when they say planes essentially fly themselves these days. So talk a little bit about how it's actually the process of flying a plane, because I've never done it before. So what is it like today in 2021, and maybe even versus when you started 30 years ago?
So first of all, in my opinion, for maybe many decades from now, there will be no replacement for a human being in the cockpit, a human trained person, overqualified or super qualified in the cockpit. Maybe they will replace one of them, and you will have a help of a co-pilot of another pilot who sits on the ground. But there's no computer to take into consideration all the risks. Sometimes the pilot will not follow the SOP because this improves the quality of the flight sometimes, and a computer will never do that. So you care about yourself, you care about your passenger, you'll be more empathic with your work when you fly as a professional pilot. The sophistication of an aircraft, the aircraft systems are so complex, and there are so many things happening in the background. The layout of an aircraft cockpit is very much simplified, and there are lots of processes that are already automated behind it. But if something goes wrong, they're all relying on the people. There's a word in aviation that you have two thumbs, and you disconnect all the automation, you fly it manually like an airplane. So a computer will not be able to do this. If something in the automation will go wrong, there'll be no thumbs there to disconnect the automation.
So the myth of the planes flying themselves, you truly do need a person in the cockpit at all times. It's probably not going away, like you said, anytime soon.
I think so, yeah.
And now, as far as for Octavian and coming together and writing this book, what was the process like in terms of having both two authors or two people with input? And I guess probably had to live some of these core values that you speak about in the book, as far as communication, checking for feedback, understanding, maybe some crisis mitigation at some points where there might have been something, I don't know, you'll have to tell me if you self-published or used a publisher, but sometimes things can happen. And so how was the process of co-authoring a book together?
It went very smooth because we were aligned on the messages, and we were aligned on what we were here to do. We were not here to write Emil's biography or another book. It does not have our pictures on the cover. So what we were here to do was to treasure the know-how from aviation and translate it as simple as possible in a how-to book format for people who want to improve. So that was the goal. We worked with the publisher, both for the Romanian version and for the international version, which was launched in June this year, and both of them are doing very well. They liked our approach, and they did not interfere too much. They liked the product. How we worked was that initially we had a list of what are the main messages we want to share. It's the feedback, it's the have a plan, it's this, and then we had a couple of pages. And then we kind of grouped them. We say, hey, personally, I don't like those books who have their table of contents spread over 3 pages. I want to see an overview of the book in 1 page, right? So we said we have to have a table of contents on 1 page only, and let's not just have 15 or 13 or whatever chapters just listed there. Let's group them in parts. So then kind of logically, naturally, these 3 groupings happen: communication, leadership, and crisis management. And then we went about, so this was a table of contents, which we presented to the publishers. And we wrote just 1 paragraph about each chapter. What would this chapter be about? What would this other chapter be about? So it was a kind of a 2-page document with a little bit more about who the book is for. By the way, in a way, it's a first of its kind, because there is no other. There are plenty of books about aviation accidents or aviation principles for pilots. There are biographies, people who've had a successful career tell their own story, but there isn't a book that says, hey, here's a how to learn from aviation transition. And we said we won't write the book if the publisher says, no, we're not sure. But we presented it to 2 publishers. Both of them said, We would love to read the book. And then we started writing the chapter by chapter. And each chapter was started by Emil writing the aviation piece. Each chapter has an aviation piece. Now, it could be a story, or it could be some principles. Here's what happens. Here's how a plane is built. Here's how crisis management is done. And then he would send that draft to me. I will maybe readjust a little bit of it. And then I would add the second part, which is the bridges and the learning to people who are not pilots and examples and so on. And then I would send the whole thing back to him. And usually in 2 or 3 ping pong rounds, 1 chapter would be done. Right. So, and that's how we went about. And practically we started in March 2019, and by August we were done with the book. We showed it to our biggest critics, which is his wife and my wife's. Luckily, they're of course they love us, so that's what we believe. I'm joking, but they are not afraid to tell us if something's not okay. Luckily for us, they said the book is good. Then we showed it to the publisher. The publisher said, we love what it's, so we can't wait to have it done. We did not start with the title. We said, let's worry about the title later. Yeah. And Dark Cockpit was an expression that appeared in the book. And then that's why we kind of, maybe it's too much to say we fell in love with the title, but we like that it fits well. It's a nice umbrella. Everybody, a dark cockpit you want in a plane, and a dark cockpit is something that you want for your week, for your month, for your life, in whatever projects you have. So that's what it was. And we did not want to have a boring structure, meaning every chapter starts with a story, and then there's 3 bullets with what you can do, and then the story. But we say in some places we start with the story and then the bullets, but in a different way we start with a story and interrupt it and say, hey, freeze, let's go back, let's go behind the scenes, unpack what happened, or so it's a different format just to keep the reader interested, and the messages are there. Yeah.
And as far as
more important about how we create the chapters, there was no moment that we were looking down on people saying, look, if you want to succeed, you have to do like me. So this is the lesson I'm giving to you. No, we said only how the things are done when we or our project is delivered well. So there's no moment when we are I say, a very severe or a bad professor that shows like this, show to you how to do the things, So this is like an empathic approach to people, and we got a very good feedback from our readers that it was a good approach and a good idea to start like this.
And most lessons are built with facts from aviation, which you can't. For instance, if I may just give a 1-minute example, many people think you have to be very good at maneuvering the plane. This is called airmanship. Are you able to glide, to fly, to land, to whatever? If you do that, you're going to be a successful captain. What aviation tells us is, no, that's just, you have to be able to do that, but there's no rule that says that the best navigator, pilot, movie, upside down, whatever, will be the best captain. Because and we present what are the criteria that they look at when they, because if you want to become a co-pilot, to sit on the right hand of the cockpit, it's not that hard. You have to be physically fit, and you have to study a lot, you have to be reasonable, and then you'll get that job. It's fine. But if you want to move to the left-hand side of the cockpit, where the captain is, that's a totally different thing. And they look not only at airmanship, that's okay. If you don't have that no reason to be here. But beyond that, for instance, they look at responsibility. Are you able to live with this responsibility? By contrast, for instance, many people, when they rent a car, they rent a $10,000 car for today to drive 60 miles and come back tonight, right? And the guy at Hertz or Avis or whatever, they say, would you like the full insurance? And some people go, oh, yeah, what would I do without the full insurance? Meaning, I'm not willing to take responsibility for a scratch on a $10,000 car. And I know now some people cannot really live with the responsibility of signing off. One chapter is called 61 signatures, because Emil realized that in a full day where they might have maybe 3 or 4 flights, the number of times he signs is 50 or 60 times. And every time you sign, you take on responsibility for the plane. They hand it to you, for the passengers, for the souls, everything. And so people cannot live with that. Can you live with that? And another criteria is, so it's airmanship, yeah, but that's not the main responsibility. And then it's maturity. Are you able to make the right decisions? especially in tough times, especially with strong wind, crosswind, whatever engine. And you have to prove to them that you're able, otherwise there's no. So what does this mean to people in business? It means, oh, why didn't I get the promotion last year? Because I'm the best salesman. Yes, maybe, but being a leader of salespeople requires some other things. Maybe you did not have those, for instance. Or people saw that, oh, you always blame other people. Yeah, I'm good, but it's their fault. It's you cannot lead with that, right? So it's about responsibility. It's about, yeah, maybe somebody else did not do what they were supposed to, but did I do everything that was up to me? And if I'm not willing to ask myself this question and always blame others for everything, that's a very strong reason to skip someone when you talk about promotion and things like that. Yeah.
Octavian, you bring up a good point. You had mentioned in there was something that jumped out to me in terms of fitness and being ready and being prepared. And you know, I'm big into, you know, health and wellness myself. And, you know, I was in the military years ago in the Navy, and to even get in, you had to have certain qualifications and certain things that you had to perform. And you had to, it was a battery of tests: physical fitness, you know, psychological, mental, intellectual, all these, even things from, you know, vision and hearing and all these different things. Can you speak to Emil a little bit about how rigorous it is, some of the level or the quality of where you have to be just to even be a pilot? Because from what I hear, it's not easy, and you need to be able to check the boxes, so to speak, and you have to be fit for duty.
Most of my time, my professional time, I spend it in full flight simulators, examining people. I told you I have the privilege of European Aviation Safety Agency license, and I checked people from all over Europe. Germans, UK now is out, but I checked from England. I checked people from France, from Belgium, Italy, Spain, Portugal. And the easiest part is to just tick the box in a syllabus. But when you check a pilot when you train a pilot, it's easy to check the bullets. But when you examine pilots, because on your signature, that pilot will go out and fly with the passengers, is a very, very great responsibility, you know. And we have a saying that if you, based on the performance in the simulator, if you are willing to let your family fly with that pilot that day, let him pass. If not, ground him. So it's a great responsibility. And the mirroring glass we are looking at the pilot, the captain especially, is not their ability to fly, is not their airmanship, is not their knowledge, because without the knowledge they will be not in a cockpit, but is their attitude, the way they assess time, the way they assess the situation, the way they build their decision, the way they maintain their decision, the situation awareness level they have, and things like this. These are the mirroring glass I'm looking at as a pilot when I'm assess his performance in the simulator. And it's not easy, because sometimes you have a very good, very handly, good handler, you know, in the aircraft. And sometimes I spend more time with that person trying to see if it was just he was lucky that day, how he was able to do so many maneuvers in such a short time, doing them all in a perfectly order, in a timely manner, you know. And I'm more concerned about those people, because they can do lots of things in 3, 4, 5 seconds, but you don't know if something else from the environment will come in, plus will not break his back, as we said, you know. So it's important to see. That's why I prefer people they have a plan, they have a scenario in their minds, and they respect the landmarks. They don't want to show to anybody nothing, you know. They will just do their job in a perfectly smooth order. And these are the people, the pilots I like, you know. And we have in the book this example that you have the heavy lifter, you know, the weightlifters in the Olympics or in the contests, and they lift, I don't know, 244 kilograms, I don't know, 400 pounds. But nobody throws that weight on somebody's shoulder, on the sportive shoulder. They prepare to lift it. They will lift one section there, they will do a jump, and they will do this in an order. They will respect that steps to lift the weight, isn't it? It's the same with the pilots. And when you hear that something went wrong, it happened especially to people that are overconfident. They are doing everything like this because they are so good, and they are doing it in the last moment, and they do so many maneuvers because they're so good. If something else happened, even a miscommunication, they can fail. And they can fail not just the simulator, but they can fail a flight, which is different story.
Can you speak to more the specific of the level of fitness? Is there like a standard where someone has to be able to do X, Y, Z in terms of their level of fitness, or in terms of their vision, or mental acuity? Are there standards that they must be able to pass? Like for the military, it was always a PT test. You had to run a mile in a certain amount of time. You had to do a certain amount of this, a certain amount of this. Are there standards of quality in terms of the physical side, or is it subjective per person?
No, there's a standard. We have a medical examination each year, and we pass this specific exam to have a medical license. And that medical license allows you to fly. And on top of that, you go to the simulator, the full flight simulators for training, and then for checks every 6 months. So if you see a young co-pilot in the right-hand seat of an aircraft, you know that person went twice per year to perform training sessions and to be examined by an examiner.
I remember Emil sharing the story of the gyro, or I don't know what the term is, that they're being set on a chair and the chair revolves like we see in the movie. Maybe our listeners saw the movie Space Cowboys, where these actors want to go to space, and that's part. So in addition to running and heartbeat and everything, they have to maintain their consciousness even when they're turned at very high speed and also upside down. So if you are in a roller coaster with a pilot, you don't need to worry. He or she will have absolute no problem because they're trained for that. So, but on the other hand, if some of our listeners say, "Oh, I don't like roller coasters," because then bad news. Then if you want to be a pilot.
So side note: are either one of you excited about the second Top Gun movie coming out here soon? Have you seen the previews for it?
Yeah, we've seen the movie.
You excited?
Does it come out? Because some movies are keeping, for instance, James Bond keeps postponing itself for years now, but we're looking forward to the.
Now getting back to leaders and people in different target markets. You mentioned doctors. You mentioned corporate CEOs and people that are in these high level positions of leadership, and they're looked up to, and they're dependent upon. How are you making an impact in those avenues? And are you able to talk more to the speaking engagements, or how you actually go into a company and affect change?
Yeah, we usually do one of three things, or three things. The easiest is addressing larger audiences when they meet online or in person. A lot online now, but that's fine. Talking about attitude, talking about handling change, talking about being open. So that's one way. Second way is working with smaller groups and training them specifically on handling a crisis. And Emil, what we do is that we present real situations that happened in an aircraft, and we put them in groups, and how would you handle that? And we don't give them situations that require aeronautics knowledge, because they wouldn't know how to, but we give them situations that require common sense knowledge or know-how in terms of leadership and communication, and how you handle that. And the third thing is we work with CEOs in one-to-one coaching, where Emil prepares them in the same way as he prepares captains, with checklists, with making sure they have a good picture of themselves, because some people tend to see themselves, the more subordinates I have, the bigger I tend to feel that I am. And Emil brings them down with the feet. Hey, are able to do this and this and this, and how are you growing your co-pilots? Because this is an expression, we grow our co-pilots. Emil mentioned it. In some industries, it doesn't really happen, right? In some industries, I'm here, my VP is there. My concern is for the business, obviously, and for me. And of course, if they learn something along the way, that's fine. Only when time comes for me to do something else or to retire, then it's about succession planning. And I look at the 10, who could be. But in aviation, this is a practice. It's a standard preoccupation of the captains to constantly give feedback and grow their co-pilots, because, as Emil said, they're up there at 30,000 feet, and the difference between a plane and a car is that if a car breaks down, you pull to the side of the road and you say, what are we going to do? Let's call somebody, let's walk, let's whatever. That's not an option in the plane, right? You have to land, and you have to land it properly. Otherwise, it's bad. So the more skilled everyone is in that cockpit and on that plane together with flight attendants, the better it is for everybody. So these are the three ways: speeches, working with smaller groups, and in one-to-one to CEOs. The biggest impact, obviously, is the smaller the group and the more the time, the biggest the impact. But obviously, you cannot work one-on-one with 5,000 people or 1,000 people. But still, a message of 1 hour can shake them a little bit and can generate something that they can talk about later. They can talk about expressions like growing our co-pilots, give feedback, and build a decision and things like that, which kind of takes the message forward.
Emil, anything to throw in there?
Every time I speak, at the beginning of my speeches, I was trying to find the bridges between my job and the other people's, So every time I try to explain how close we are as professionals acting in different domains, having the same challenges, how difficult it is for us to build a decision or to grow your team and things like this. That's the same everywhere, actually. But now I'm just telling people about my. Of course, I'm doing like profiling. I know my audience, what's the message for them. So I'm just telling my stories. And it's amazing to see people at the end of the stories, the way they react, they come and wow, it's exactly. And we pass the message very easily like this, because I have a very vast experience in the aircraft. I have a vast experience in the simulator, so I'm able to pass the message through different audiences. And as I already mentioned, the way we wrote the book in Octavian opened my eyes on different aspects of what we are doing, it not mechanically, but the way we do things are described in our syllabus of training, described in our normatives and our laws, and you have to obey them, otherwise you will not be a professional pilot anymore, and you are checked every day. My environment is a cockpit where we have 6 ways, CVR, cockpit voice recorder, all the parameters are recorded, all your actions are recorded. So we are in a very strict environment. But when you see the cockpit with somebody else's eyes, when they look from a distance, not just you have a better overview, as I mentioned already, but you realize that they are meant to be like this. The things are in order only if you follow steps, not steps 1, 5, 3, 8, 10, 9, 7. No, steps are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. When you do this way every time, when you follow the checklist and you're performing this, when you communicate well with your colleague, when you allow the feedback to you, this will mean that you'll do a good flight.
Beautiful. If I were to summarize in 1 minute, what is one of the red threads of the book and of aviation is that there's a ton of work behind what you see. You see the plane taking off smoothly and handling nicely the turbulent conditions and landing safely at the that's good. That's why people say the planes could fly themselves. No, they couldn't, because what's behind the scenes is years and years of preparation, of studying, of simulation. And that's true in all fields of life. It's never just, I'm talented, so I'll get this job, or I've sold it, I've got a new account now. Maybe you got one new account now and everybody applauds you this month, but are you able to replicate that next month and next month and next month? Because you're lucky, but there's a ton of preparation that's there. Sure. And that's valid in every field. And if our listeners want to take away just something, is that there's a ton of work that can, and the more work there is, the more in control you feel, the more relaxed you feel, the more you can enjoy what you're doing. And that's true in aviation, and that's true in sales, that's true in leadership. By the way, leadership, we talk about in our training company, we teach various topics. For example, we teach project management, process improvement, so on. And in those areas, there's always a new concept. Now it's agile. You have to be agile now. There's always something. But in leadership, what you learn now will be valuable and useful to you even in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now. So it's one of the best investments that people can make to improve their communication skills, their relationship skills. Yeah, if they become the best project managers today, there's a new concept tomorrow. It's not waterfall, it's agile, it's sprints, whatever. You have to start not from zero, to be fair, not from zero, but you have to go back a little bit and stuff. But in leadership, whatever you accumulate is one of the best investments that you can make. That's why everybody says, hey, invest in yourself with a book, with listening to a podcast, with writing something, with observing. Emil said at the beginning that aviation history is written in blood. What is the meaning of it? The meaning is that aviation is very quick to learn. If there's an accident happening somewhere in the world, everybody knows about it literally within hours. And then the people who happen to be in simulators from now on, they'll practice that too. And then the producers, Airbus and Boeing and the other ones, will think, what do we need to improve or change in the way we build our planes to prevent that from happening? So there's a lot of learning. For instance, we now celebrate 20 years from the horrible attacks at 9/11, and that's horrible. Aviation has learned a lot from that, right? It's things that passengers don't find convenient. Take your belt off, or for instance, one inconvenient thing is that before 9/11, cockpit door was open for a long time, and you could see in, and if you had a kid, you can take the kid in. Now not anymore. For safety purposes, you have to understand that, but aviation learns, and that's what we should be doing every day from everything that is happening to us.
Gentlemen, as far as where the journey is going to lead from here, we're looking at the end of 2021, going into 2022, and all, like you said at the beginning of the show, lots of change in the world. So, what's the through line for both of you moving forward? What's going to be the journey unfoldment, or in terms of business, or in terms of things you're looking forward to in the next few months to a year?
Well, obviously, COVID is bad, and it's a tragedy. People are losing lives. This change has also brought opportunities. For us, the opportunity is that we get to meet people literally all over the world without the need to physically travel all over the world. So the world has become a smaller place. And that's an opportunity for you and us to meet and chat. But for people who listen to us, who are unhappy in their jobs, but in my city, do something else. Yeah, but in my city, there's no really other good company that I would like to work for. Okay, maybe not. But now you can apply for the best company you ever wanted to work for, wherever that company is. I don't like the crowd of the big cities. I move out to the suburbs or come back in. So it's a time of change, but we have to be looking at the opportunities and to pursue them.
For myself, I will keep my skills and my knowledge the best by reading, by flying or training in the simulator. Because even though last year I was flying only the charity flights, or I was volunteer with my colleagues to fly, I don't know, flights bringing people home, or bringing flying medicine, or flying cargo flights, ferry flights. It was difficult for us to see. Now I'm flying almost 100 hours a month. Then I was flying 2 to 5 hours a month. It was difficult for us. So the way to keep the mental level of awareness that you are a professional pilot, it was this for me. And I told all my colleagues, I said, look, that when the things will start again after the pandemic, they will start with aviation in a second. And the passengers are not guilty to step in an aircraft with unprepared pilots. So prepare yourself every day, like for a normal flight. Prepare yourself for like you have the same amount of hours a month. Maybe this is an opportunity to increase your knowledge, reading more, or making more computerized base training syllabus. You can spend your time in this way, or you can sit there and blame the pandemic and saying that you are a victim. And of course, when the flights will not start with you, because there will be somebody checking you, and there will be more sadness. Yeah, they don't like me. Of course, it is a choice. You can do things to look forward, or the pilots are trained to solve things. They look forward, they look to the future, because every flight is a potential malfunction in a flight, and you are prepared to solve it. And there's no place, as Octavian said, to stop the aircraft, put the parking brake in midair and stop there and look and scratch our beard. Oh, what can we do now? So mentally, we are trained, actually. We are looking for the future to solve things. So if I can pass this to your listener, that bad things will always happen. But always people, they will go through all the difficult times are the ones that are prepared. Prepared doesn't mean to stay home in your couch and looking at TV, or you can do something with your time to improve your skills, to be, I would say, active in your professional life, not just personal life.
Beautiful, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure to hear from both of you. Hear your story, Emil. Same for you, Octavian, and how you've come together to put this beautiful tool and this way of thinking into the world. I'm looking forward to seeing where your journey leads. Thank you both for being on the show.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you, Jesse.
To you and to our listeners.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Good luck with your shows, Jesse.